Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into darkness. Not a real cliff, friends. The cliff inside your mind. The one where you're about to let go of everything you've worked for. Where giving up feels like the only mercy left. You're exhausted, broken, out of options, and a voice in your head whispers, "Just stop. It's over. You tried. You failed. Let it go." What if, in that moment, instead of falling, you found something you didn't know you had? An unseen strength. A flicker of hope buried so deep you almost missed it. I'm the Cosmic Sage, and today I'm going to tell you about a woman who stood on that cliff, who was one breath away from surrendering everything, who had every reason to quit and no reason to continue, except one. And that one reason, in one desperate moment, changed everything. This story is about those raw, desperate seconds at birth breakthroughs, where one choice redefines an entire destiny. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll never look at failure the same way again. But before we ride into this tale, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, I bring you stories that'll remind you why you started, why you're still here, why you can't give up. And if you've been with me, show some love with that like button. Someone needs this story today. Now let's get into it. The year was 1889, and the town of Silverton sat in the high desert of New Mexico territory. It was a harsh place, unforgiving, the kind of town where people came to start over or to disappear. Living on the edge of that town, in a small shack with a leaking roof, was a 34-year-old woman named Catherine Brennan. Catherine was a seamstress, not by choice but by necessity. 5 years ago, she'd been married to a railroad worker named Thomas. They'd had a small house in town, a good life, plans for children, a future. Then the accident happened. Thomas was killed when a rail car coupling failed, crushed instantly. Catherine was left with nothing, no savings, no life insurance, no family to help her. Thomas's company paid her $12 and told her she was lucky to get that much. In one day, Catherine's entire life collapsed. She sold everything they'd owned to pay for the funeral, moved into the cheapest shack she could find, and started taking in sewing work to survive. For 5 years, she'd been scraping by, mending clothes, sewing dresses, patching torn work shirts for miners and cowboys, charging prices so low she could barely afford flour and beans. But Catherine had a dream. She wanted to open a real dress shop, not just mending, but creating, designing, making beautiful dresses for women who had none. She'd been saving every spare penny for 5 years, hiding coins in a tin can buried under her floorboards. She'd saved $43. It wasn't enough to open a shop, but it was a start. It was hope. And then, on a Tuesday morning in October, everything fell apart. Catherine woke up to find her shack had been broken into during the night. The floorboard pried up, her tin can gone, $43. 5 years of sacrifice. Stolen. She sat on the floor of that empty shack and felt something inside her break. Not just her heart, her will. She was 34 years old, alone, broke, working herself to exhaustion for pennies. And now, even that small hope was gone. Catherine looked at her sewing needle on the table, at the pile of mending work waiting for her, at the life she'd been living for 5 years. And she thought, what's the point? Have you ever been there, friends? Where trying feels more painful than quitting, where hope feels like a cruel joke, where every step forward gets knocked back twice as far. That afternoon, Catherine didn't pick up her needle. She just sat, staring at nothing. A neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, an older woman who'd always been kind, knocked on her door. "Catherine, you all right? I saw your door was open this morning." Catherine told her about the theft, about the $43, about 5 years of hope stolen in one night. Mrs. Patterson sat down beside her, put a weather hand on Catherine's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, dear. What are you going to do?" And Catherine said something she'd never said out loud before. "I'm going to give up." Mrs. Patterson didn't argue, didn't tell her to stay strong, didn't give her empty encouragement. She just said quietly, "I understand. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Mrs. Patterson said, "Can I tell you something before you decide?" Catherine nodded. 20 years ago, I was where you are now. My husband drank himself to death, left me with 3 children and a mountain of debt. I was ready to give up, ready to take those children back to my father and admit I couldn't do it. She paused. I was packing our things. And my youngest daughter, she was only 6 years old, she came up to me and said, "Mama, are we leaving because you're sad?" And I said yes. And she said, "But if we leave, you'll still be sad there too, won't you?" Mrs. Patterson's eyes got distant. That little girl didn't know it, but she said the thing I needed to hear. Running away wouldn't change anything. Giving up wouldn't make the pain stop. It would just mean I gave up while still carrying all the same pain. She looked at Catherine. "I'm not telling you not to quit, dear. Lord knows you've earned the right. But I'm asking you to ask yourself one question before you do." What question? If you give up today, will you wake up tomorrow and feel relief? Or will you wake up tomorrow still broken, but now also carrying the weight of knowing you quit? Mrs. Patterson stood to leave. "That's the real question, Catherine. Not can I keep going, but which pain can I live with? The pain of trying or the pain of quitting?" And she walked out, leaving Catherine alone with that question echoing in her mind. That night, Catherine lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Mrs. Patterson's question. If I quit, will I feel relief or regret? She imagined waking up tomorrow, packing her sewing supplies, leaving Silverton, going where? Doing what? Working as a maid somewhere, taking in laundry, growing old alone in someone else's house, invisible, forgotten. And she realized something that hit her like a punch to the chest. Quitting wouldn't stop the pain. It would just add a new pain on top of it. The pain of knowing she gave up. The pain of wondering what if for the rest of her life. The pain of looking in the mirror and seeing someone who surrendered. Catherine sat up in the darkness. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She whispered to herself, "I don't know if I can make it, but I know I can't live with quitting." And in that moment, in that desperate, raw, broken moment, Catherine made a choice not to succeed. She had no idea if she'd ever succeed. She made a choice not to quit. Those are two different things, friends. And most people don't understand the difference. Success is about outcomes. Not quitting is about character. Catherine got out of bed, lit her lamp, pulled out her sewing supplies. She looked at the pile of mending work she was supposed to do. Work that would pay her 50 cents. Work that felt meaningless. And then she did something different. She pulled out a piece of fabric she'd been saving. A small piece of beautiful blue cloth she'd bought a year ago from a traveling merchant. She'd been saving it for someday. She thought, if I'm not going to quit, then I'm not going to live like I'm already defeated. And she started sewing, not mending, creating. She stayed up all night making a dress. Not for anyone, just for herself. Just to remember what it felt like to create something beautiful instead of just fixing broken things. By morning, exhausted and hungry, Catherine held up a dress that was simple but lovely. It wasn't much. It didn't change her situation. She was still broke, still alone, still grieving. But she'd made a choice. She wasn't quitting. That morning, Catherine wore the blue dress to the general store to buy flour. It was foolish, wearing a nice dress to buy groceries. But she didn't care. She was tired of living like she was already defeated. The store owner, Mr. Henderson, looked up when she walked in. "Mrs. Brennan, is that a new dress?" "Yes, sir. I made it last night." He studied it closer. "That's fine work. Real fine. My daughter is getting married next month. She's been looking for someone to make her wedding dress. But everyone in town is too busy or too expensive." Catherine's heart skipped. "I could make it, Mr. Henderson." "How much would you charge?" Catherine had no idea. She'd never made a wedding dress before, but she thought about the $43 she'd lost, about starting over, about not quitting. $10, she said, praying it wasn't too much. Mr. Henderson smiled. "Deal. Come by tomorrow and meet my daughter." Catherine walked out of that store in a daze. One conversation, one dress she'd made in despair. one decision not to quit, and suddenly a door opened. She made that wedding dress. It took her 2 weeks of careful, painstaking work. She poured everything she had into it. When the bride tried it on, she cried. It was perfect. Mr. Henderson paid Catherine $10. But more than that, he told everyone in town about the beautiful dress his daughter wore. Within a month, Catherine had 3 more orders. Within 3 months, she was making more money than she'd made in the previous 5 years. Within 6 months, she'd save enough to rent a small shop on Main Street. 1 year after that night, she almost quit. Catherine Brennan owned the most successful dress shop in Silverton. She'd gone from a leaking shack to a real business, from despair to purpose. But here's what matters most, friends. None of that would have happened if she'd quit that night. 2 years later, Catherine was working in her shop when Mrs. Patterson walked in. "Catherine, I heard about your success. I'm so proud of you." Catherine hugged her. "Mrs. Patterson, you saved my life that day. Your question changed everything." The older woman smiled. "I didn't save you, dear. You saved yourself. I just asked you to think about which pain you could live with." Catherine nodded. "I think about that night sometimes. About how close I came to giving up. About how different my life would be if I had. Do you ever wonder what would have happened?" Mrs. Patterson asked. Catherine looked around her shop, at the dresses hanging on display, at the women browsing her designs, at the life she'd built from the ashes of her worst moment. "All the time," she said softly, "and it terrifies me, because I was one decision away from never having any of this." Now, friends, listen to me carefully. You're going to have moments where giving up feels like mercy, where the pain of trying feels heavier than the relief of surrendering, where you're standing on that cliff inside your mind, looking down into darkness, ready to let go. And in that moment, you're going to have to make a choice, not about whether you'll succeed. You don't know that yet. Nobody does. But about which pain you can live with. The pain of trying and possibly failing, or the pain of quitting and definitely wondering what if for the rest of your life. Catherine didn't know if she'd succeed when she decided not to quit. She just knew she couldn't live with the regret of giving up. That's the real question at the edge of that cliff. Not can I keep going, but can I live with myself if I don't? And here's what I need you to understand. The moment before breakthrough looks exactly like the moment before collapse. They feel the same. The exhaustion, the despair, the sense that nothing's working. But they're not the same. Catherine was one conversation away from her wedding dress commission. But if she'd quit the day before that conversation, she'd never have known it was coming. Most people quit one step before their breakthrough. Not because they weren't close, but because being close feels exactly the same as being hopeless. You can't see around corners, friends. You can't see what's coming next week or next month. All you can see is today. And today feels impossible. But what if tomorrow is different? What if next week the door opens? What if you're standing right on the edge of everything changing? You won't know unless you don't quit. So here's what I'm asking you. Don't quit today. I'm not asking you to succeed today. I'm not asking you to have hope today. I'm not asking you to feel strong today. I'm just asking you not to quit today. Do the next small thing. Make the next piece. Take the next step. Show up tomorrow, not because you know to work out, but because you can't live with the regret of not knowing. This week, if you're standing on that cliff, do 3 things. 1, ask yourself Mrs. Patterson's question. Which pain can I live with? The pain of trying or the pain of quitting? Be honest. The answer will show you what to do. 2, do one small thing that represents not quitting. Not something big, something small. Catherine made a dress. You might write 1 page, make 1 call, take 1 step. Just show yourself you're still here. 3, remember that the moment before breakthrough looks exactly like the moment before collapse. You can't see what's around the corner, so don't quit before you see it. Before you go, I need something from you. If this story found you at the edge of that cliff, if it reminded you why you can't quit yet, share it with someone else who's standing there too. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what's the one thing you're refusing to quit on, even when it feels impossible. Let's build a community of people who keep showing up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. Every week, the Cosmic Sage brings you stories for the moments you want to give up, for the days you need reminded why you started. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs it today. This is the Cosmic Sage, reminding you that the moment before breakthrough looks exactly like the moment before collapse. You won't know which one you're in until you don't quit. So don't quit today, friends. Not because you know you'll win, but because you can't live with not knowing. Catherine Brennan was one decision away from losing everything. Instead, she was one decision away from everything beginning. You might be too. Don't quit today. Until next time, keep standing, keep showing up, keep not quitting. The cliff feels like the end, but what if it's actually the beginning?